After receiving some magic wands for free from Tara, Joel is now in a very good mood. His mission was accomplished. He got one of these infamous magic wands for free. On the way out the front door of Estar, Joel wonders what he should do with his wand. What's its potential? What are its powers? As he ponders this, he points the wand at a decoration on the front of the shop. Suddenly, a ray of bright light shoots out from Joel's wand and hits the star-shaped decoration. This is very exciting to Joel. He's never been able to create spontaneous rays of light before. He announces to his group of friends, "I don't know what you guys are doing, but I'll be at home practicing with my wand and its rays of light." But when he says, "I'll be at home," Joel is thinking of the ray of light, and he ends up saying, "estaré," at home. This word is pronounced with a stress on the last syllable, which sounds like ray. So if you think estaré, you'll remember the future first-person form, I will be. Next, Joel looks over at the lizard, who's staring down at its own wand with a look of curiosity. Is the lizard ambitious? Is it going to aspire to create majestic rays of light, just like Joel is doing? The lizard lifts its wand and points it at the store, but instead of producing a bright ray of light, the lizard's wand simply produces a pathetic noise. Ra. Joel rolls his eyes. I'll be at home practicing, but the lizard will probably just be right here making ra noises with his wand. The word here is estará, so it has a stress on ra at the end, and it means he will be, she will be, or it will be. Remember to store both of these words here at the front of the store. Some simple examples for these words are I will be here, which should be estaré aquí, or it will be here, which is estará aquí. Now you may have noticed that the word estará is very similar to the word será. We've simply put the letter A with an accent at the end of the infinitive, estar, creating a ra sound. Well, that's very observant of you to notice that. Keep watching closely because as we learn more verbs, you'll notice that this is a pattern that's consistent. Every it, he, or she verb in the future tense has a stress on ra at the end. In other words, the lizard always says ra in front of the verb shops. Now, the lizard continues to stare down at its wand, fascinated at its powers. But Joel and the pandas are not impressed, and they've had enough of this. While the lizard is distracted, they sneak around to the back of the store. There's one last thing that they have to see. As Joel and the pandas round this hat-shaped store and reach the backyard, it turns out that the rumor that Joel heard is correct. This astronomy-themed magic shop has a beautiful outdoor telescope. Joel is struck by the beauty and simplicity of this scene. It's so quiet, so peaceful, and so stunningly brilliant with all the stars around them that even before he approaches this gorgeous telescope to explore the planets, he just pauses to let it all sink in. Slowly, Joel flies up to the telescope with the pandas filing silently behind him as if they're performing a religious ceremony. This environment is so different from the distressing hyper-interior of the store that this seems like an entirely different world. And of course, the lizard with his noisy wand that says Ra is fortunately on the opposite side of the building. Before Joel looks through the telescope, he looks around carefully to make sure nothing disturbs his peace. Thankfully, the lizard and Tar are still nowhere to be seen or heard. Just before looking through the telescope, Joel closes his eyes and sincerely wishes, I hope that the lizard would just stay at the front of the store. Then, when he puts his eye to the telescope, the breathtaking wonders of the planets and stars strikes a chord in his hard bee heart. His new wish is, I wish that I could stay here forever. Now notice that when he referred to the lizard, he said, I wish that it would stay over there. And when he referred to himself, he said, I wish I could stay here. The way that he would say each of these things is, I hope that the lizard esté somewhere else, and I hope that I esté here forever. So the word esté, spelled E-S-T-E with an accent over the last E there, is the subjunctive form of estar. It can mean I be, he be, she be, or it be. For example, I hope that I'm here would be I hope que esté aquí, or I hope que yo esté aquí. All of a sudden, Joel's focus is shattered by a loud, all too familiar speaking voice. Oh, you found the telescope. Isn't it amazing? Check out the distance settings. You can even see planet Earth from here. Hey, your head is really small. Do you close one eye, or are you able to look at the planets with both eyes? Does that even work? Joel's fury rises when he hears this. He spins around to see Tara, who has just come out of the back door of the shop. With no control of his anger, Joel yells rudely, I want you to be somewhere else. But Joel's exclamation comes out more like, I want that you be somewhere else. And to say you be, he uses the word estés. So it's just like esté, but with an S at the end. I want que estés somewhere else. As another example of estés, to say I hope that you're here, Joel would say, I hope que estés aquí. So back here we have the words esté and estés. Just like in ser, we had sea and seas. Now you might be connecting the dots on something. Since estés for you be is just esté with an S at the end, shouldn't we be able to come up with a form that has an N at the end instead? Like estén for they be. Or maybe estemos for we be. Yes, that's right. So for example, I hope that they're here is I hope que estén aquí. And I want us to be here would be I want que estemos aquí. But for now, since esté and estés are more common by far, we'll just practice perfecting those forms in our sentence examples. It should be easy to expand to the other forms from there. The most important thing to remember in the backyard is the stressed syllable ste here at the telescope. That's going to be the stressed sound in all of estar's subjunctive forms. Here's a sentence example. I want her to be fine, structured as I want that she be fine. I want que she esté bien.
Quiero que ella esté bien.
Now for a more complicated example. Do you remember the para qué phrase? For example, in order that you be the first one would be para que seas the first one. Well, we can use that with the subjunctives of estar instead if we're talking about somebody's location. For example, in order that you be here would be para que estés aquí. I did it in order that you be here would be lo I did para que estés aquí.
Lo hice para que estés aquí.
So now Joel is in a bad mood again. Tar has ruined the sublime experience of the telescope, so he tells the pandas that it's time to leave. As they walk back around the side of Estar's shop toward the front, Joel now wonders where the lizard is. He wants to get home as soon as possible, but he's not hearing any ra sounds in the front of the store. Then Joel remembers that the lizard has been overly exposed to light this evening. The lizard really can't stand much bright light at night, so it's probably fled to the darkest place it could find. Joel ponders this for a moment. Where would that dark place be? Then it occurs to him. The mountain of Ria is the darkest place in Yol. So Joel announces to the pandas, "We're going to Ria!" Just then, Joel hears a ra sound. The lizard is not at Ria after all. It has stuck around this whole time. It turns out that the sunglasses were so dark that the lizard wasn't able to see well enough to go anywhere at all. Joel is surprised, and the pandas begin to think that Joel's idea was ridiculous. Why would the lizard go all the way to the mountain of Ria from here? But Joel defends himself. He says, maybe I was wrong, but still, if the lizard had gone to a dark place, he would be in Ria. To say he would be in Ria, Joel says, estaría in Ria. You can probably see the connection between this verb and sería from lesson 2. The word estaría simply adds the word would to estar. He would be, she would be, or it would be. Just as sería adds the word would to ser. So for example, estaría bien means it would be fine, or maybe he or she would be fine. And estaría aquí means he, she, or it would be here. I have to point out that in Spanish, there really is no word for the English modifier would, W-O-U-L-D. A lot of Spanish students make the mistake of translating sería or estaría as would, which would create some really strange sentences. For example, they might want to say, I would go, and they end up saying something like, yo estaría go, or something like that. But in reality, estaría means would be, specifically. Each Spanish verb has its own version of would. Just as a hint, the word for would go is iría, and the verb for would eat is comería. We won't officially learn these for a while, but it's just good to keep in mind. Don't try to use an individual word as would. Instead, the modifier would in English just goes into a single word in Spanish depending on the verb. At this point, everything that we've learned in this lesson refers to a specific person. As some examples, estoy means I am, estaban means they were, estará means he or she will be, and estés means something like you be. Meanwhile, estaría means something like I would be, he would be, she would be, or it would be. All of these words take place on the ground. Each one can change based on the person that it refers to. So estará can change to estaré, and está can change to están, depending on whom you're talking about. Similarly, estaría can change to estarías, you would be, or estarían, they would be, and so on. But again, we won't worry about these extra forms for now. Just remember the stressed syllable ría, and the word estaría is the only conjugation that we need for now because it's the most common. Well, one way or another, Joel is very bored of the Estar shop at this point, and maybe you are too. It might just seem like there are way too many forms of this verb. So far, every single scene has had several different possible words because the words change slightly based on the person. But we've now learned all of the important conjugated forms of estar. There are still a couple of unconjugated forms to learn, but these are very easy because they don't change forms at all. For example, there's the word estar itself, spelled E-S-T-A-R. That's the infinitive of the word, the name of the store. There's only one version of it, and it doesn't change based on whom it refers to. So here's a sentence example. I like being here, or I like to be here. In Spanish, either of those would be, to me it is pleasing estar aquí.
Me gusta estar aquí.
Let's go over another idiomatic phrase. You've been taught in the past that en means at. Well, we're about to throw a wrench in the works here. When talking about time, Joel usually uses a instead of en. Joel likes clocks, and it gives him pleasure to say ah when he thinks about moments on the clock. For example, to say at 4 o'clock, Joel would say 4 o'clock. Now let's make it even a little more complicated. In old formal English, someone might use the statement that I'm about to say. I'll be happy upon arriving at home. In that case, what is the word upon doing? It's actually used to indicate the time that an action is taking place, the action of arriving at home. So upon arriving at home. Joel likes this formal mode of talking, but instead of saying upon, he prefers to use his voice. But actually, he uses the word al, spelled A-L. Al means to the. Since a refers to time, al can be used to refer to the time that something happens, such as at the time of being something or doing something. For example, upon being at home would be al being at home. And in these cases, al is always followed by an infinitive. For example, upon being at home is al estar en home. This next sentence example uses that phrase. I'll be happy when I'm at home. Literally, I'll be happy upon being at home. Estaré happy al estar en home.
Estaré feliz al estar en casa.
Now, Joel is probably thinking this right now, but before he goes home, he wants to see what kind of damage his wand has done to the front of Estar's shop. He hopes that maybe he burned a hole in the store front when he waved it at the store and it sent out that ray for estaré. But when he goes up and flies to the fin sign to see what kind of damage he may have caused, the wand doesn't seem to have caused any damage. He's a bit disappointed and turns to leave, but then he remembers that before leaving a store, he likes to ring the bell first. Joel is surprised to see that Estar doesn't seem to have a bell. Remember that when we learned ser, we had siendo, which was represented by a bell on the corner of the shop. Well, Estar is round, and so it doesn't have any corners. Tar has no place to hang a goodbye bell. And actually, that's just because that form of estar is not really used very often. As Joel looks around, puzzled by the fact that there's no bell, he realizes that there are some curious noises coming from the roof of the store. He hears a voice saying, "Testing, 1, 2, 3. Oh, I'm too close to the speaker, or maybe I bought the wrong equipment. Oh, sorry, that's probably my fault." Someone's testing a microphone on the roof of Estar. Joel flies up to investigate. And anyway, it's a habit that he has. He usually can't resist checking out a store's roof when he's finished visiting the store, as you'll see in future lessons. To Joel's dismay, Tar is the one behind the microphone, though you probably aren't surprised to know that. Tar sees his face as soon as he flies up there. It seems that this flat, round roof is where Tar tries to host late-night parties. She has a microphone, but no audience at all. Joel's the only other person present. Tar is excited to see Joel. Honestly, she would probably be excited to see anyone, because nobody ever comes to her parties except by accident. But whenever someone shows up, she tries to play up her guest as much as possible. So she points the microphone at Joel and rambles bubblingly, "I know you. You've been in my store, I think. That makes you one of my favorite people. You've been in my store, right?" Joel admits, "Yes, I have been in your store." And Tara shouts, "You're a stud!" This is the only compliment that Tar knows. Joel says, "Why do you think I'm a stud?" And Tara says, "Because you have estado in my store." Tara thinks very highly of her customers, and so she uses this compliment on people who have been in her store. For her, this word, been, is estado. She stresses the stad part of the word, which sounds a bit like stud to her. The word estado means been, kind of like sido from ser's roof. But estado, of course, refers to things like location, not what you are, because it's part of estar rather than ser. For example, I have been here is I have estado aquí. I have been well, or I have been fine, is I have estado bien. But of course, this applies to anyone. We have been fine is we have estado bien. You have been fine is you have estado bien. And they have been here is they have estado aquí. The word estado never changes forms. Now, we've learned all the forms of estar that we need to learn, but I have a question for you. Have you truly internalized the layout of this shop? Can you close your eyes and walk around the store, visualizing the words that appear in each scene? If you can, sit down and draw out a map of this store from memory to make sure that every conjugation is solid. If any of the images are not clear in your mind, try to enhance all of the images in your own imagination until they're so vivid that you can remember them all reliably. As an example, you might forget estuve, because the stew on Joel's face is not memorable enough for you. You need to make it smellier, or you need to imagine what it would feel like to have beef stew on your face for estuve. Or perhaps you can't remember están, because maybe in your imagination the pandas don't always appear on the lizard's tail. So you'll have to imagine what it would be like to be a stuffed panda standing on a lizard's skinny tail, trying to stand up among all the dizzying bright lights in the store. Do anything you can to trigger the memory of the word stand when you think of the pandas in the entrance of Estar. Once you can consistently remember the words from every scene, then you know that you've mastered the conjugations.